Vincent sat attentively watching as his young son energetically raced around their new apartment. The living room had been transformed into an imaginary metropolis, a sea of cardboard box buildings created by his son's vivid imagination. "Dad, there is so much room to play here," Ryan exclaimed. "You like our new home?" Vincent asked, eyes twinkling. "I love it. Mom would like it too, right? She can see our new apartment, can't she?" Ryan asked, his innocent eyes glistening with curiosity. Feeling a surge of emotion, Vincent walked over to his son, kneeling down to his level. He looked into Ryan's eyes filled with love and nostalgia, then embraced him in a warm, tight hug. "Of course she can, Ryan. Of course, she does," he reassured. 2 years had passed since Vincent's wife and Ryan's mother had tragically passed away. Ryan was just 3 years old at that time, yet he had held on to memories of his mother despite his tender age. This was in no small part due to Vincent's diligent efforts to keep his wife's memory alive by placing their family photo in every room of the house. Ryan, often curious about his mother, would frequently ask Vincent to share stories about her. "Dad, did Mom love to read?" Ryan asked Vincent one day as they were reading a bedtime story. His question brought back a wave of warm memories of the times when Vincent and his wife would get lost in conversations about the books they were reading. A nostalgic smile crept onto Vincent's face. "Your mother was a real bookworm, Ryan. She loved to tell me stories from the books she was reading. I know she would have been thrilled to see you learning to read, even before you started school." Inspired by this, Ryan would pick up a book and tentatively touch the letters with his tiny fingers. Vincent used this approach to educate his son through questions and answers. It made him feel as if his wife Leah was still present in their lives, aiding and guiding their son's growth. "Dad, is Grandma going to live with us again?" Ryan suddenly asked. "Absolutely, buddy, but we need to unpack and organize everything first and set up a room for her. Then we can head to the station and pick her up." "Can we see the trains there?" Ryan's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Definitely." "Great! Traveling by car is so boring. I wish I could have gone with Grandma." Vincent chuckled heartily at his son's candidness. "I needed you here, buddy. Who else was going to help me move all these heavy boxes?" Ryan pondered for a moment before responding. "All right, Dad, I'll take the train next time." Vincent agreed, promising Ryan plenty of train rides in the future. "Ready to start unpacking?" Ryan nodded eagerly and immediately got to work. He lunged at the largest box, trying to pry it open. Despite his best efforts, the stubborn box refused to open, and he stumbled backward, landing on his backside. Vincent held his breath, anticipating a cascade of tears, but was relieved when Ryan simply giggled instead. Over the next 2 hours, the father-son duo worked diligently, emptying boxes and organizing their new home. Finally, a worn-out Ryan requested a small snack before promptly falling asleep, one leg hanging off the edge of the sofa. Vincent gently draped a blanket over his son and continued with the task at hand, careful not to make too much noise that might disturb Ryan's peaceful slumber. As he continued to unpack the remaining boxes, he stumbled upon his wife's collection of books. He gently opened a few, savoring the familiar scent of the pages, a silent testament to his wife's loving touch. As he neatly arranged the books on the shelf, a photograph slipped from the pages of one. It was a picture of Leah, his wife, but a version of her Vincent didn't recognize. She wore clothes that he didn't recall ever seeing her in, and her hair was cut in a surprisingly short style, something entirely new to him. He speculated that the photo might be from her youth, yet she appeared to be the same age as when they had their son. The mystery puzzled him. Safely tucking the photograph in his pocket, Vincent resumed his task, aligning the remaining books on the shelf. "Grandma, here's your room," Ryan chimed, his face beaming with pride as he showed Wendy her new quarters. Wendy surveyed the apartment, then turned to her son, her eyes tinged with melancholy. She heaved a deep sigh and murmured, "This is a lovely apartment, Vincent. I do hope we can finally settle here." Vincent, preoccupied with his thoughts, nodded in agreement without meeting her gaze. "I hope so too, Mom. That's what they assured us." An army officer by profession, Vincent's recent promotion had brought them to this town. The higher-ups, aware of his personal situation, had assured him that he would be stationed here until the end of his contract. However, the end of his contract was nearing, a reality that came with a complex set of emotions. Vincent's beloved wife Leah used to accompany him everywhere. That was until illness kept her confined with his mother while Vincent continued his travels. Tragedy struck when he least expected. Instead of the recovery everyone had been desperately hoping for, Leah passed away suddenly. The devastating memory of that day was permanently etched in Vincent's mind. He was rushing home from yet another trip, anxious about his mother's well-being, missing his family, and eager to play with his son and embrace his ailing wife. Leah was there, waiting for him, but her condition had severely deteriorated. Normally, she would greet him at the door with her enchanting smile and a soft, sweet scent. She would always wear something special for his homecoming. This time, the scene was starkly different. Vincent entered the house in silence, leaving his luggage on the floor and removing his jacket. The house lacked its usual vibrant energy, and the foreboding sense of inevitability weighed heavily on his heart. Summoning his courage, Vincent decided to confront the negative thoughts swirling in his mind. He stepped into the bedroom, finding Leah asleep. Vincent's heart ached as he took in the sight of his wife's peaceful face. He quietly settled down on the edge of the bed, watching her with the longing to curl up next to her and offer comfort through his embrace. Tentatively, he reached out to place his hand over hers. Feeling his touch, Leah slowly opened her eyes and gave him a weak smile. "Hey, sweetheart. How are you? I've missed you so much," Vincent whispered, his voice choked with emotion. Her smile lingered, gradually growing warmer. "I've missed you too, darling," she responded. But then, a flicker of fear passed over her features. "I was scared that I wouldn't make it until you returned." Her radiant smile returned, casting away the shadow of fear. "But you're here now." She drew a deep breath, her smile persisting. She looked at Vincent for a while, silent yet communicative. Then her eyes gently closed, and her once warm smile faded to a neutral expression. Vincent remained by Leah's side, believing that she had drifted back into a much-needed sleep. However, a sudden chill of apprehension washed over him. "Leah, sweetheart!" He gently shook her head, only to have it fall lifelessly onto the bed. A cry of horror escaped him. "Leah!" Panic surged through him. He frantically checked for a pulse, started CPR, and yelled his mother to call 911. In between desperate attempts to resuscitate her, he caressed Leah's cheek, pleading with her to wake up. The paramedics arrived, but their arrival only confirmed his worst fear. As they covered Leah's body and transferred her onto a gurney, Vincent felt a fog descend on his mind. His screams echoed in the background, unheard by his own ears. His mother held him back, preventing him from chasing after the gurney. "Vincent, please, it's over. She's gone. I'm sorry. You have to stay strong for Ryan," she implored. Ryan, blissfully unaware of the tragedy unfolding, was in another room, engrossed in his cartoons. His laughter, sparked by the cartoons, was the only positive aspect of the moment. Meanwhile, one of the most cherished people in his life had just slipped away from his world. Ryan, being just a little kid, remained oblivious to the event unfolding a few feet away from him. For years, until he grew up and truly understood the gravity of that day, he would believe that his mom had journeyed to a faraway land to fetch him the most beautiful flowers and toys. And so, they found themselves alone. A week after the funeral, Wendy broached the difficult subject with Vincent. "You need a change of scenery, son. This house carries too much weight for you right now. Don't worry about Ryan and me. We'll manage. He's a strong little man, helping out a lot. He'll start attending kindergarten, so I'll have plenty of time to cook and clean," she assured. Vincent didn't respond immediately to his mother's suggestion. He needed time to think. In the following days, he took Ryan out fishing. Dressing his son turned out to be a comedy of errors, as he struggled to find Ryan's jackets, hats, and socks. It was a humbling reminder of how much Leah had done around the house, something he hadn't fully appreciated until now. Once they finally embarked on their journey, Ryan started his barrage of questions. Some were simple, some absurd, and others quite challenging. Vincent had to put serious thought into his responses or resort to online searches. As they neared the lake, Ryan asked, "Dad, why don't fish drown?" Vincent chuckled at his son's inquiry. It was a question he had never pondered himself. He managed to craft a satisfactory response for Ryan, hoping it would put a pause to the questioning, but Ryan's curiosity remained unquenched. Vincent reflected on how the responsibility of educating and guiding Ryan had primarily been Leah's. He gained a newfound respect for the enormity of the task mothers undertake. In that moment, a sense of peace washed over him. Remembering Leah brought him comfort, and he found himself feeling grateful for all she had done in raising their son during his absences. It made him feel a little closer to her, despite the gaping hole her departure had left in their lives. That evening, after a hearty meal of the fish they had caught, Vincent announced his decision to his mother. He had decided to accept a deployment to Afghanistan. Vincent's tour lasted a year that despite its challenges was good for him. The rigors of the mission kept his mind occupied, preventing it from dwelling too much on the profound loss he had suffered. He returned a decorated soldier, his bravery recognized with a medal and the generous financial reward. That year marked the beginning of the end of his constant military travels. He was ready to settle down and prioritize Ryan's education, and he felt his presence was a vital part of that. However, he wanted to move away from their current town. It held too many reminders of Leah. The new apartment, once a chaotic mess of boxes, was now a testament to their hard work. Everything was in its place, and Vincent thought it looked pretty good. He and Ryan sat on the sofa, sipping orange juice and basking in the satisfaction of a job well done. When Wendy walked into the apartment, she laughed at their proud faces, shaking her head in a gentle, "Oh, you boys" manner. She had her own vision for how the apartment should be arranged, and she immediately set to work. By evening, the apartment had undergone a complete transformation and had a homier, more welcoming feel to it. Vincent looked around in surprise. "Wow, I have no idea what we were doing wrong." Wendy laughed. "It's simple, son. That's because you're men." Then she looked around and asked, "Where's our biggest helper?" They searched the apartment, but Ryan was nowhere to be found. They checked the door, but it was locked from the inside, ruling out the possibility that he could have left. Just as Wendy was about to reach for her anxiety medication, Vincent's voice rang out from the bedroom. "Guess where he is?" Once again, Brian had fallen asleep on the job, so to speak. He had climbed into a large duffel bag, zipped himself inside, and drifted off. Wendy exhaled in relief. "Vincent, can you put him to bed? I'll start making dinner." Vincent picked up the duffel bag and unceremoniously tossed it onto the bed. Wendy shot him a stern look, and he laughed. He carefully extracted Ryan from the bag and tucked him into bed. 3 days later, Ryan was enrolled in a local kindergarten, and Wendy was eager to explore the town and get to know their new surroundings. Leah and Vincent had both learned how to manage their home and family through trial and error, without the guidance of their parents. Wendy, Vincent's mother, lived alone at the time and was impressed by the domestic prowess Leah displayed each time she visited. "Your apartment is like a surgical room," she would often say. "How do you manage to keep everything so clean, work, and prepare meals for your family?" Leah would smile at Wendy's compliments, always remembering the words of her teacher at the orphanage. "Remember, there are only 2 paths for you once you leave this place: the streets or prison. There is no third option unless you believe in magic. And since you're here, you should understand that there is no such thing as magic." Yet Leah did believe in magic. Vincent was her magic, her miracle. Wendy, who had accepted her as a daughter, was magic as well. And of course, her most treasured magic was her son Ryan. Vincent often wondered why Leah never sought out her biological parents. Each time he brought up the subject, Leah would dismiss it with a shrug. Vincent, however, wished she would at least try. "I don't want to know what happened to them," she confessed once. "I'm afraid of the truth. What if they're alive? What if they abandoned me because they didn't want me? I don't know how I could live with that." But as Vincent would soon find out, there had been something that Leah found out about her past. Vincent pulled up to their apartment building just as Wendy and Ryan rounded the corner. Ryan was animatedly telling his grandmother a story, and Wendy was smiling indulgently. "Hey there, big man," Vincent greeted Ryan, scooping him up in his arms. "Just in time. You're gonna help me with these bags. I've got all of Grandma's mega orders." Wendy peeked in the car trunk, her eyebrows raised in surprise. "There is hardly anything here. You're quite the exaggerator." Once inside their apartment, the family was all smiles and laughter. Ryan, energetic as always, quickly got to work helping his father unload the bags. As Wendy started cooking, Vincent and Ryan sat down on the kitchen sofa. "So, how was your first day, man?" Vincent asked his son. Ryan's face lit up as he recounted his day, detailing everything from the games they played to the stories they read, the lunch they had, and even an encounter with a frog on the playground. "Max wanted to kick it," Ryan told his father, "but I told him, what if she has children waiting for her at home? Max is a good boy though. He's my friend. We're best friends." Vincent let Ryan tell his story, knowing it was important to let his son express his excitement before asking any questions. "Dad, I didn't know that my sister is in the kindergarten. Can we invite her over?" Ryan asked, pausing his storytelling. Vincent looked puzzled. "Your sister? What are you talking about, Ryan?" "My sister, Dad. Even the teachers were talking about it. They were saying things like, 'No, it can't be true,' and things like that. They said Kate was definitely my sister. I'll show her in the morning, you'll see." Vincent turned to his mother, both amused and confused. She shrugged her shoulders and smiled, both of them assuming it was a bit of child's play and not something to worry about. The next morning, while Vincent was speaking to the kindergarten teacher, Ryan ran off inside. Moments later, he came back out leading a little girl. Vincent froze. The girl looked exactly like Ryan, the only difference being that she was a girl. The teacher, Mrs. Wood, studied Vincent's expression. "You probably have no idea what's going on, huh? I can't believe it's a coincidence." Vincent shook his head, shocked and bewildered. "I don't understand anything. I don't know what's going on. We've never even lived in this town." "Do you have any relatives in town? Perhaps someone who could be related somehow?" Mrs. Wood asked. "Not really. My wife had no relatives that we knew of, and I communicate with my relatives, so I would have known." "Who are her parents?" "I guess I should meet them. Perhaps there are things I don't know." "Sure. Kate's got a mom and a grandpa. So, what is it today, Tuesday?" "Alright, then her mom's going to pick her up today. She'll be here around 4. "Thank you." Immediately after leaving the school, Vincent phoned his mother to tell her what had happened. She sounded worried. "I'm not feeling too good about this." "Mom, I'm equally confused. I'm not trying to hide anything. I hope you're not worried about that. I'm going to talk to her mom and find out soon." At 3:45, Vincent was waiting nervously outside the kindergarten. Parents were beginning to arrive to pick up their children. When he heard the little girl, Kate, shout, "Mom?" he turned around. Kate was in the arms of a woman who looked hauntingly like Leah. She was young, with the same warm brown hair that Leah had, falling in soft waves around her shoulders. Her eyes, so similar to Leah's, were a startling green, alight with affection as she gazed down at Kate. She was petite, just as Leah had been, and there was a certain gracefulness about her, a familiar air of gentleness that Vincent remembered all too well. She was speaking softly to the little girl in her arms, her voice a soothing murmur that Vincent couldn't make out from where he stood. But he didn't need to hear what she was saying. Her tone, the look in her eyes, they told him everything he needed to know. She loved this child, this doppelganger of Ryan, as fiercely as he loved his own son. As Vincent moved closer, he could see the small, intimate gestures that were achingly familiar. The way she brushed a stray lock of hair from Kate's face, the way she laughed, her head thrown back just a little, eyes crinkling at the corners, just like Leah used to. A cold dread settled over him, his heart pounding against his ribcage. It was as if he was seeing a ghost, a cruel illusion conjured by his mind. He took a shaky step forward, his legs feeling like they might buckle under him any second. He swallowed hard, his mouth dry. "Leah?" he whispered, the word barely escaping his lips. The world seemed to tilt, his vision blurring at the edges as a wave of dizziness washed over him. Was it possible? Could it be her, or someone so strikingly similar? The shock was too much. The darkness began to cloud his vision. The echo of his son's crying pierced through the veil of darkness, calling him back to consciousness. It was a sound Vincent knew too well, a sound that had awakened him from deep sleep countless of times. It was a sound that tugged at his heartstrings and fueled his parental instinct. Vincent blinked his eyes open, struggling against the lingering dizziness. Ryan's tear-streaked face swam into his vision, his small form trembling as he sobbed. The sight of his son's distress was a harsh jolt, snapping him out of his stupor. With great effort, Vincent pushed himself to sit up, fighting off the wave of vertigo that threatened to pull him back down. "Hey, big man," he said hoarsely, reaching out to brush Ryan's tears away with the back of his hand. "Stop crying now, okay?" Ryan sniffled, looking at his father with wide, worried eyes. Vincent managed a weak smile, hoping to ease his son's concern. "I just got a little dizzy, that's all. Been standing under the sun for too long," he explained, making light of the situation. He couldn't afford to worry Ryan any more than he already had. For now, he needed to stay strong for his son, even as the shock of what he had just seen threatened to shatter his resolve. The woman was now watching him, her gaze darting between him and Ryan. Her features were a mirror of confusion, a clear reflection of her bewilderment at the sight before her. The striking resemblance between her daughter and Ryan was undeniably clear, and it seemed to have caught her off guard, just as much as it had startled Vincent. It was apparent that she was trying to make sense of the uncanny similarity between Ryan and her own daughter, the look of intense concentration on her face revealing her struggle to comprehend the strange situation. Picking himself up, Vincent fumbled in his pocket for a moment before pulling out a photograph. He passed it to the woman, who looked at it with curiosity. "This is my wife, Leah," he said, his voice carrying a note of sadness. The woman's eyes shot up to meet his, a look of bewildered surprise on her face. "But how could you have this? I lost this picture 6 years ago. That's me in the photo." Confusion washed over Vincent. He could not comprehend what was happening. Swiftly, he pulled out his phone, unlocking it to reveal the screensaver, a treasured family photograph of himself, Leah, and the baby Ryan. The woman took a long, hard look at the image displayed on Vincent's phone. As her eyes traced over the features of the family portrayed, an uncanny recognition spread through her. It was as though she was gazing into a mirror, seeing herself smile back from the image. An uneasy feeling slowly washed over her, making her skin prickle with goosebumps. Nearby, Mrs. Wood has also ventured to look at the phone. As her eyes registered the face of the woman in the photograph, she couldn't help but gasp in surprise, her hand instinctively flying to her mouth. The woman standing in front of them, Kate's mother, bore an unsettlingly strong resemblance to Leah. It was as if they were looking at a ghost. The similarity was so striking that it was impossible to deny or ignore. "My name is Naomi," she finally managed to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think we need to talk to my dad." Without uttering a word, Vincent agreed, nodding his head in response. As they climbed into his car, a blanket of silence wrapped itself around them. They didn't speak during the entire ride, their minds whirling in a turbulent storm of thoughts, questions, and startling revelations. Each of them was trapped in their own world of confusion, trying to piece together the puzzling situation that unfolded in front of them. In stark contrast to the adults, Brian and Katie were a bubble of excitement, chattering away in the backseat, completely oblivious to the tension that permeated the air. Their innocent laughter and playful banter provided a welcome distraction to Vincent and Naomi's heavy thoughts. They eagerly exchanged stories, each eager to impress the other, while casting occasional curious glances towards the front seat. The seriousness of the situation hadn't dawned on them. All they knew was that they had found a new friend in each other and were eager to spend as much time together as possible. The house was tucked away in a quiet suburban neighborhood. It was warm and inviting, with a homely aura that eased some of Vincent's apprehensions. Katie took Ryan by the hand and led him towards the room, excitedly showing him her treasure trove of toys and games. As the sounds of their giggles echoed through the hallways, Vincent was left alone with his thoughts in the living room. The ticking of the clock on the wall seemed to grow louder with each passing second, amplifying the tension in the air. His eyes skimmed the framed family photos adorning the walls, each one adding the uncanny similarities between Naomi and Leah. His heart pounded in his chest as he anticipated the arrival of Naomi's father. Would he finally be able to shed some light on the bewildering situation they found themselves in? The waiting was agonizing. As Vincent waited, Naomi offered him a glass of water and photo album filled with pictures from her childhood. Vincent thanked her for the water and started to look through the photos. What struck Vincent the most was how much Naomi resembled Leah, from the same dark curly hair to the same sparkling eyes and heartwarming smile. Every picture seemed like a reflection of his late wife at various stages of her life. The similarity was unsettling, and it added to the sense of confusion that had been looming over him since the morning. Naomi observed as Vincent scanned through the photographs. His face was a canvas of changing expressions: curiosity, bewilderment, acceptance, and then back to puzzlement. She could sense his struggle to comprehend the situation. Despite wanting to provide comfort, she was unsure of what to say. Mixed emotions swirled within him. There was a heart-wrenching sadness, an echoing pain that reminded him of Leah's absence, a pang of longing, of missing his wife and the life they had together. He felt a void in his heart, an emptiness that had been with him since Leah's passing. Yet, alongside the sadness, a surreal sensation was creeping in. Here was someone who bore an eerie resemblance to Leah, sitting right beside him. It was as though a ghost from his past had stepped into the present. Even though he knew Naomi was not Leah, her presence stirred up feelings that he thought he had buried long ago. As he grappled with this peculiar mix of emotions, Vincent heard the sound of footsteps approaching. It was time to meet Naomi's father. It was time to unravel the mystery that had turned his life upside down in a matter of hours. An elderly man in his 70s entered the living room, his gaze falling upon Naomi and Vincent as they sat together, engrossed in the old photographs. A puzzled expression crossed his weathered face. Naomi swiftly explained the peculiar situation to her father, detailing the astonishing resemblance between herself and Vincent's late wife and their coincidental meeting at the kindergarten. As she spoke, the color drained from the old man's face. He sank into a chair, rubbing his forehead with shaky hands and mopping the beads of sweat that had formed there. Once Naomi finished her account, the room fell into a heavy silence. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall, each second pulsing with anticipation. Finally, the elderly man, Mr. Moore, drew a deep breath. It was a preparatory breath, one taken before diving into a deep and potentially treacherous story. Mr. Moore straightened in his chair, and his gaze, though filled with years of wisdom, also held a hint of melancholy. He looked at Vincent and Naomi and began to unravel a tale that had been kept hidden for decades. It was apparent that delving into this past was an enormous challenge for the elderly man. His voice trembled as he began, first extending an apology to his daughter for the secrets he had kept. However, when Naomi gently informed him of Leah's passing, Mr. Moore's composure broke completely. He drew a sharp breath and his face crumpled. The next moment, he was weeping, his shoulders shaking as sobs racked his body. He covered his face with his hands, and his tears slipped through the gaps between his fingers, falling silently onto his lap. Over all these years, Mr. Moore had never once imagined he would find himself in a position where he would have to divulge this deeply buried secret. The bewildering puzzle that was Naomi's life was about to be turned on its head. As Mr. Moore began to recount his tale, he started with a stunning revelation. He was not Naomi's biological father. He had met her mother a year after the twins were reportedly born. However, her mother had never mentioned twins to him. She had only ever had one child, or so she told him. The room grew quiet as this information sunk in. Naomi's expression was one of stunned disbelief, her gaze flicking between Vincent and Mr. Moore, trying to reconcile the story she was hearing with the reality she had known her whole life. Meanwhile, Vincent was deep in thought, contemplating the implications of this bombshell and trying to piece together the disjointed fragments of the puzzle that was unfolding before him. Jack Moore knew only that Naomi's mother had been a woman of meager means. As fate would have it, their paths crossed at a time when he was yearning for a family and she was in desperate need of support. It was a simple, unadorned tale, two lonely people finding each other amidst life's challenges and choosing to face the world together. Jack had accepted Naomi as his own from the moment he'd laid eyes on her, a small bundle in her mother's arms. Little did he know the deeper complexities that lay beneath the surface of their shared life. His first marriage had ended in divorce, the fallout of the harsh reality that he was incapable of fathering children. When he met Daisy, a single mother with a baby girl, Naomi, he believed he had found a second chance at a family. Together, Daisy and Jack crafted a loving narrative for Naomi, one that would shield her from the harsh realities of her beginnings and prevent her from harboring any worries or uncertainties. Jack had remained blissfully ignorant of the fact that Daisy had given birth to twins, choosing to give one up for adoption because she feared she wouldn't be able to provide adequately for two infants. Thus, Leah had been separated from her twin sister and birth mother, her fate leading her to be adopted and raised by a foster family. It was a decision that Daisy had made with a heavy heart, a choice that was as unthinkable as it was heartbreaking. Life had granted Daisy all that she had hoped for, yet there was one burden that weighed heavily on her soul. She was plagued by guilt for her past actions, for the decisions she made years ago. This guilt seeped into her everyday existence, tainting her joy, perhaps even contributing to her ill health later in life. A few years before her death, Daisy made the decision to seek out Leah, her abandoned daughter. With a photograph of Naomi in hand, she set out on a months-long journey to track down the child she had left behind. However, Daisy was aware of the reality of their prospective reunion. She didn't expect Leah to accept her, to embrace her as a mother. After all, Leah hadn't grown up with Daisy's family values, hadn't been privy to their shared jokes or familiar quirks. She was a stranger in every sense of the word, a product of Daisy's past that she had long kept buried. She shadowed Leah discreetly, observing her from a distance. The first time their eyes met, Daisy was on the verge of tears, but she refrained, aware that to Leah, she was merely a stranger. Every fiber of her being yearned to rush over to Leah and reveal their true relationship, to claim her as her own. She was captivated by Leah as if she was seeing her newborn child for the first time. They were in a coffee shop and Leah seemed to be waiting for someone. Daisy's heart ached with the longing to approach her, to engage her in conversation, yet she hesitated. It was a familiar sensation, that of her own selfish desires pulling her one way, while her concern for Leah held her back. She knew that Leah must have moved on, and to reveal her true identity would risk reopening old wounds. It was a risk she wasn't willing to take. Daisy remained in her seat for a while, her gaze fixed on Leah. When Leah rose to head to the restroom, Daisy seized the opportunity to make her exit. She left the old photograph of Naomi on the table where she had been sitting. A waiter came by to tidy up the table and found the forgotten photograph. Taking a quick look around to locate the owner, the waiter noticed Leah returning from the restroom. Looking back at the photograph and then at Leah, the resemblance was unmistakable. The waiter approached Leah, handing her the photo and saying that she must have dropped it. From that day forward, Leah's life was no longer the same. She started experiencing nightmares, and the creeping sensation of being watched would often disturb her peace. Her fear and growing depression began to weigh heavily on her, disrupting her everyday life and mental well-being. Sadly, these escalating stressors would only exacerbate Leah's existing health issues. In a cruel twist of fate, the stress and strain from her emotional turmoil would contribute to a rapid deterioration of her health, ultimately leading to her untimely demise. Ryan and Kate formed a deep bond, constantly declaring their brother-sister relationship to everyone around. Their connection was so palpable that they didn't really need to assert it. Anyone who looked at them could see their sibling affection for each other. Naomi became a frequent visitor at Vincent's home. She eagerly soaked up any anecdotes or memories they shared about her late twin sister Leah. This was her way of discovering a lost part of herself, a piece that had been missing all her life. Through their stories, she began to form a picture of the woman her sister had been, and in a way, found a new connection with her own past. Over time, Vincent's feelings toward Naomi began to evolve. At first, he couldn't help but see glimpses of Leah in her, a poignant reminder of his lost love. But gradually, he started seeing Naomi for the individual she was, distinct from her twin sister in many ways. The differences between the two women began to manifest clearly, erasing the shadow of Leah that Vincent initially saw in Naomi. They had different tastes, different mannerisms, different ways of laughing, and a different outlook on life. Eventually, Vincent and Naomi found themselves requesting their parents to babysit Ryan and Kate. They started going out together to the movies or dining out, just the two of them. They began to enjoy each other's company and to appreciate the unique person the other was. Despite the strange circumstances that had brought them together, they found a comforting companionship in each other. Frequently, Jack, Naomi's stepfather, would eagerly offer to pick up his granddaughter Kate from the kindergarten. This gave him a chance to spend more time with Ryan's grandmother, Wendy. It was clear he cherished these moments. Over time, the bond between the two families grew stronger. The shared connection of Ryan and Kate served as a catalyst, and the family slowly began to meld into one. A year after this unexpected reunion, Vincent and Naomi decided to solidify their relationship. They had a modest but heartfelt wedding. Despite the unorthodox way their paths had crossed, They found love and companionship in each other. Together, they built a new family, one built on understanding, acceptance, and a deep respect for the unique journey that had led them to this moment. Life moved on its usual rhythmic flow. Vincent, Naomi, Ryan, and Kate, along with Jack and Wendy, were now a united family, bonded not only by blood, but also by an intricate tapestry of shared history and emotions.